How's it going, YouTube? Oxy here. In today's video, I'm gonna go over where Toho can take the Godzilla franchise after Shin Godzilla. Cause, as I've stated before, and if you don't know, the MonsterVerse, at least the Godzilla Creators, right, Toho owned, the contract ends at Godzilla Vs Kong, right? This is the last, so far, or the publicly known, film that will involve, any of the Toho creatures. And with the contracts, there were also, like, agreements where, like, going back to Godzilla's 2014 movie, where an American-made film, and then, let's say how, like, Shin in 2016 could not come out in the same year. There had to be, like, a gap, right? Like, it's like, you could say they take turns, if you will. And yeah, of course that happened, as we all know. 2014 Godzilla, 2016 was Shin Godzilla, and then 2017 was Kong Skull Island. Like, they were spaced out. But with the most recent knowledge is that Toho, at least as far as we know, they're not going to continue the MonsterVerse. So there's no word yet. I mean, we're all hopeful, but let's just say they don't. Or if they do, obviously they still want to continue with their own universe era, right? And so, of course, with Shin Godzilla, that was the start of the Reiwa, or the fourth major era. Of course, you go back to the Showa, first 15 films. You had Heisei, the middle 7, my personal favorite. You had Millennium with another 7, and then, of course, we're at Reiwa. And yeah, I guess this video, I'm just going to go over where they could go, right? Because, spoiler warning, of course, we're going to go over, like, the ending of Shin, obviously, to discuss what the idea was and where they could go. So, in the film, it's pretty much just, like, I guess the best way to put it is almost like a reboot, right, of the original Gojira. Because it was pretty much just a modernized take on what what the Japanese government, the bureaucracy, like how they handle the sudden of appearance of let's just say a monster, right? And of course the film is also satire. It's a great film. If you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend. I will warn though, if you're expecting like big monster fights, that's not that kind of film. It's a more deep, like, thought out film. Like, it's more about, like, what are the implications, like, if a giant creature, like, appeared in the world. And it's a great film. Admittedly, it's more talky, like, more development. I won't say not character development, but it's just more, like, talky. But anyways, the story is that, obviously it's like Godzilla appears. And it's just like how the government handles it, you could say. And like I said, it's satire because it's like it almost like jokes with the idea that the way things are, it's like they take too long to respond to things. Like they're not well equipped to, like, I guess, resolve or like answer like that type of like relief, right? Like if that were to really happen. And the film shows that with, like, all the conference meetings they have as, like, Godzilla's making his rampage and stuff. But so, in the end, they defeat him, but not how it was, like, expected. Because, of course, later in the film, it's like the U.S. or, like, even the UN, United Nations, get involved. And it's all about, nothing's working, like they try bombing him, that doesn't work, and they're like, we're gonna drop a nuke, and then the film does sit on that in the third act, of like, what are the implications of like, another atomic bomb being used, and to be dropped again in Japan. But ultimately, we'll call them the band of misfits, right, like all the, there's like some politicians, but it's like the scientists, everybody figure out a way to stop him, you could say, where they freeze him, right? They pump the coagulant into him and he freezes. And the last shot of the movie, of course, is like the interesting part where you see his tail and there was like these like, I mean, the best way to call them is like Godzilla humanoids, right? Like they were like human shaped, but they had the spikes and everything coming out the tail, and it's left open ended, right? Like, oh, like what would have happened had he not frozen? Because essentially Godzilla was like evolving, right? Like constantly, almost like, I guess a good parallel is like Doomsday from DC, where it's like he evolves to like whatever issue, or like, you know, whatever's thrown at him, he'll evolve to like surpass that or like negate whatever that was. And it's a cool concept. But yeah, so where they could go, I mean, obviously you have the traditional sense of like, okay, they're just gonna introduce more monsters, right? Like, I mean, maybe even do a mirror image, right? We have Anguirus in there, like in the second film, right? Call back to Godzilla Raids Again, the second film ever. But I mean, honestly, I guess what I would like to see explored is like that idea. Of course, the director, he's famous for like Neon Genesis Evangelion. If you didn't know, the guy that basically created that was the director for Shin Godzilla. I'm not good with names, so I won't you know, I don't want to butcher his name. But yeah, it's like he made the film, and really good job. He obviously, Shin Godzilla is like a new take on the monster, right? It's like very, I don't know, it's just awesome to see. But yeah, it's like, so where could they go? I mean, you have I guess obviously we had to unfreeze him, right? Or he'd have to eventually thaw out. And I mean, I guess it's like, so what? Would he just keep evolving, right? I mean, like I said, there was the humanoids at the end. Would, I guess, Godzilla spread? Like, I guess think of it like the opposite of Destroyer, right? Where it's like Destroyer was a bunch of smaller organisms making one. What if it's the opposite? Where it's like Godzilla's like, oh, you know, to spread my rule across the world or whatever. He breaks down, right, into all the humanoids, and like, you know, like a virus, right? Like a literal disease. He spreads across the world to eventually conquer it. And I've seen crazy theories where like in the end, like he would evolve all the way to like a black hole, or like essentially an alternate universe. Like he just expands to that amount, and like it's crazy. But again, like you can really feel like the Neon Genesis influence, and it's really cool. Like it's a fresh take, you know, on a 60-year-old, close to 70-year-old franchise now. Like, I don't know, it's a nice take. But yeah, it's like, so I guess what monsters would they introduce, right? I mean, because they were going out there now. Yeah, it's like you can introduce a new creatures, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, we're all for that, right? Just add to his catalog, right? His the cast, if you will, of the monsters. But I mean, here, like a traditional monster, I mean, I guess what, you'd have to introduce Mothra, right? Or Ghidra. I mean, obviously, like the big three, you could say, of the MonsterVerse. We'd have to see them, right? Or I mean, could they toy with the idea of like Minya or like Baby Godzilla? Like, what would that look like? I mean, that'd be pretty terrifying, especially Shin, like in his first form, you know, when he's like trudging through the city. It's pretty scary. Like, he's pretty, I don't know, like, I guess what's the word to make it? It's almost like mannequin-esque, where it's that fear of like something that looks human but it's not, like uncanny, you know, where it's like it's similar but there's enough different about it that makes it off, you know. And like obviously all the phases really are like that. I mean, look at his final form, right? He's like some big ass like tar creature, right? Like all the charred skin, the black and red. I love the design, and yeah, it's like, it's just really cool. But yeah, like I'd assume you'd have to introduce Mothra, right? I'd love to see how they would envision her. You know, would she be more bee-like, like the Legendaries, Mothra, right? Where she had like the stinger and everything, like more fierce? Or, I mean, maybe they make her some abstract, like she's like a goddess, right? So she's like a presence, you could say. Like she's not actually there, she's more like everywhere. And then Ghidra too, right? It's like, I mean, obviously it's like, okay, so he's a 3-headed dragon. I mean, would they ever go with like the whole 8-headed dragon thing? The Hydra? You know, like, I think like early on, Ghidra was like, they were gonna do like a 8 heads, but obviously for production costs, you could imagine like they were just like, nah, just keep it at 3. Like, could we see that? Like a Hydra, Ghidra, right? Like 8 heads, like that'd be crazy. It'd be cool to see. And I guess another funny thing is like, would Shin and Legendaries ever meet? I mean, I doubt it. Obviously, each is Godzilla, so the idea of them meeting would be like one of them has to be like an imposter, right? Or one of them has to be like different, like not of the same race, you could say. And it's just really like that. I don't see happening, but I mean, new monsters, right? It's like the possibilities are endless, really, because they can go many ways. I mean, knowing the director's like thought process, I could see creatures like Hedera, the smog monster. Like I could see stuff like that, like just out there. I mean, maybe we'll get a modern jet jaguar, right? Like, what would that look like? It'd be pretty scary, huh? No, but yeah, it's like, I don't know. I just hope Toho does continue it, like, the series, because it's been, 5 years now since Shin? And it's like, it's about time we get a new one. I'd love to see them continue their series just as much. I'd love Legendary to continue. Like, it's just, I think it could work. They could both coexist. I mean, it was already in the agreements before that, like, a movie would come out, right? One at, like, there'd be gaps, right? They can't cross-release, like, same year or whatever. And it's like, that could work. I mean, obviously, that just takes some planning between the studios. And, yeah, because as far as we've heard, Legendary's MonsterVerse is doing really well. So, it's just, it'd be nice to see. But, yeah, guys, I mean, that was just my little thought process of, like, what Toho could do after Shin. I know it's basic, but it's like, I mean, really, you don't have much to go off, and plus, again, it's been 5 years, and as far as we've heard, like, the director and everyone have said, it's like, there's no, unless, of course, they're just, like, hand-waving everybody off, right, to be like, oh, it's a surprise, but as far as everyone knows, there is no movie in the works, so Toho, get on that. I'd love to see a sequel, or even, I mean, hey, go for, like, another approach is, like, go for solo movies, right? Like, do Mothra, or Rodan, right? Just like how you did back then. Maybe introduce them in their own solo film. Do the Marvel way, right? And then we get some big destroy all monsters, like Avengers, if you will, right? Where we all meet them. That'd be really cool to see, too. But yeah, guys, that was just my video, just some thoughts, on where they could go. And as always, make sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. And yeah, be on the lookout for future videos, guys. And I've been your host, Oxy. Take care.